Welcome to the Terror Time.
The first story is about the vanishing shadow in the old tunnel. I still can't believe I agreed to explore that old tunnel. It had been abandoned for years, and people in town whispered about strange things happening there. Some said it was haunted, others claimed it was cursed. I didn't believe in ghost stories or paranormal activity, but something about that place always gave me the creeps. One night, after a few too many beers, my friends dared me to explore it alone. I wasn't one to back down from a challenge, so I grabbed my flashlight and headed out. The tunnel was hidden deep in the woods, forgotten by time. The closer I got, the more uneasy I felt. The air was cold, and the rain sounds from the earlier storm still echoed in the trees around me. It felt like I was walking into a creepypasta or one of those scary stories you read about on Reddit. The kind that never ends well. I reached the entrance, and the darkness seemed to swallow my flashlight beam. My heart raced as I stepped inside. The tunnel was narrow, the walls damp and covered in moss. Every sound echoed, making it feel like I wasn't home alone anymore. I kept telling myself it was just an old tunnel, that there was nothing to be afraid of. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. As I ventured deeper, the air grew colder, and I started hearing whispers. At first, I thought it was the wind, but the whispers grew louder, more insistent. It felt like they were coming from the walls themselves. I tried to brush it off as my imagination, but my hands shook and I couldn't stop glancing over my shoulder. Then I saw it. A shadow, moving just ahead of me, barely visible in the dim light. My heart stopped. It wasn't the shadow of an animal, and it wasn't mine. It moved slowly, almost as if it were gliding. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. This wasn't some trick of the light. This was something real. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of it. This felt like one of those scary stories animated that I had watched as a kid, but this was happening right in front of me. I should have turned back, but I couldn't move. My feet felt glued to the ground as the shadow grew larger, its form becoming clearer. It wasn't human. It was something darker, something that shouldn't exist in this world. My pulse quickened, and I realized this was no longer just a dare. This was a living nightmare. Suddenly, the shadow vanished, and the whispers stopped. The tunnel was dead silent, the only sound my ragged breathing. I took a step forward, hoping it was all in my head. But as soon as I did, a gust of icy wind hit me, and the whispers returned, louder and more urgent. They weren't just random noises anymore. They were words, my name. I turned to run, but something grabbed me, something cold, like a hand made of mist. I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the tunnel. I yanked my arm free and bolted toward the entrance, my flashlight flickering as I ran. The whispers followed me, growing louder with every step, and I could feel the presence of whatever had touched me, chasing me through the darkness. I burst out of the tunnel and collapsed in the dirt, gasping for air. My friends were waiting for me, laughing, thinking it was all a joke. But I couldn't speak. My hands were shaking, and I couldn't stop thinking about that shadow. I had come face to face with something that wasn't human, something I couldn't explain. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the shadow, felt the cold grip of its hand. I tried watching YouTube kids' videos to calm myself, but nothing worked. The image of that figure haunted me, and the whispers echoed in my head. Over the next few days, strange things started happening. I would hear footsteps in my house at night, even though I was home alone. Doors would creak open, and I'd feel cold drafts even though the windows were shut tight. I knew deep down that something had followed me out of that tunnel. It wasn't just a ghost, and it wasn't some prank, it was real. A true horror story. I tried to forget about it, but the whispers never stopped. They were always there in the background, reminding me that I wasn't alone. One night, I woke up to find the shadow standing at the foot of my bed, its hollow eyes staring down at me. I screamed, but it didn't move. It just stood there, watching, waiting. I haven't been back to the tunnel since that night, and I don't plan to. But sometimes, when the wind howls and the rain falls, I hear the whispers again. And I know that whatever I saw in that tunnel is still out there, waiting for the next person foolish enough to enter. The second story is about the phantom in the flooded tunnel. The old tunnel beneath the city was notorious. Some called it cursed, others simply avoided it. But I was always the curious one, and when I heard about the mysterious disappearances and ghost stories surrounding the place, I couldn't resist exploring it for myself. People said it was haunted by something dark, something that could pull you into the water below, never to be seen again. Of course, I didn't believe in paranormal activity. I figured the rumors were just scary stories to keep people away. It was raining hard the night I decided to check it out. The rain sounds echoed against the concrete as I made my way to the entrance of the tunnel. Water dripped from the ceiling, pooling on the ground, making everything damp and slick. I wasn't home alone tonight, but I felt completely isolated as I stepped inside, leaving the world behind. The tunnel was pitch black, my flashlight barely cutting through the darkness. The air was thick with moisture, and the walls seemed to close in on me as I walked further in. The deeper I went, the more uneasy I felt. My footsteps echoed loudly, but something felt off. It was like someone, or something, was following me, matching my every step. The kind of feeling that makes you feel trapped in a creepypasta or one of those scary videos on Reddit. As I ventured deeper, the water level began to rise, soaking my shoes. That's when I first heard it. Whispers, soft at first, but growing louder as I moved further into the tunnel. My heart raced, and I told myself it was just the wind. But the whispers became more distinct, and soon I could hear words being formed. It was as if someone was calling my name. I stopped, shining my flashlight around, but there was nothing. No one. My hands trembled as I wiped the sweat from my forehead. This wasn't supposed to be real. It was just an old tunnel, nothing more. But the whispers didn't stop. They grew louder, echoing off the damp walls, and my breath caught in my throat as I realized they were coming from the water below. The shadows in the water shifted, moving unnaturally. My heart pounded as I stepped back, my flashlight flickering. It felt like I was living in a nightmare, trapped in one of those horror stories animated that I used to watch as a kid. The water rippled, and suddenly, a figure rose from it. It was pale, almost translucent, with hollow eyes that seemed to stare right through me. It wasn't human, and it wasn't a ghost. It was something darker, something demonic. The whispers turned into a low hum, filling the tunnel with a terrible, otherworldly sound. I tried to move, but I couldn't. My feet felt like they were glued to the ground. This wasn't just a scary story anymore. This was real. The figure took a step toward me, its feet never touching the ground. I could feel the air grow colder as it moved closer, the temperature plummeting. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, but all I could think was that I had made a terrible mistake coming here. I stumbled back, my flashlight flickering, and the figure stopped, hovering just above the water. It raised a hand, and suddenly the whisper stopped. The tunnel was dead silent, but the air was thick with dread. I could feel the weight of its gaze on me, and my legs finally obeyed. I turned and ran, splashing through the rising water as fast as I could. The tunnel seemed endless. The whispers returned, louder now, like they were chasing me. I could feel something behind me, something cold, something wrong. I kept running, my breath ragged, my heart pounding in my chest. The whispers turned into laughter. Dark, sinister laughter that echoed off the walls, making it feel like the tunnel was alive, mocking me. Finally, I saw the exit. I burst out into the rain, gasping for air, the cold wind biting into my skin. I turned to look back at the tunnel, half expecting the figure to follow me, but there was nothing, just the darkness of the tunnel and the sound of the rain. My heart still pounded, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me out. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the figure rising from the water, its hollow eyes staring at me. I tried watching YouTube Kids videos to calm down, but it didn't help. The whispers haunted me, even in my dreams. Over the next few days, strange things started happening. I'd hear footsteps in my house at night, even though I was home alone. Objects would move on their own, and cold spots would appear in random places. I couldn't shake the feeling that something from the tunnel had followed me back. Whatever it wasn't just a ghost. It was something darker, something that wouldn't leave me alone. I did some research and found out that the tunnel had a dark history. Several people had gone missing there over the years, their bodies never found. It wasn't just another true horror story. This was real, a true ghost story. I had seen it with my own eyes, and now I couldn't escape it. I haven't been back to the tunnel since, and I don't plan to. But sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet, I hear the whispers again. And I know deep down that whatever I saw in that tunnel is still waiting for me. The third story is about the lost voices in the Underpass. There's something unsettling about tunnels, especially when you're alone in one at night. It's as if they hold on to the whispers of those who passed through before you, their voices echoing off the cold walls. I never believed in ghost stories or paranormal happenings, but one night changed that forever. I had heard about the old underpass at the edge of town. People said it was haunted, that strange things happened there. Whispers in the darkness, shadows moving just out of sight. Like most people, I thought it was all just scary stories. That was until I found myself walking through it alone, late at night, after my car broke down nearby. I had no choice but to cut through the tunnel to get home. The wind howled, and the rain sounds from earlier in the evening seemed to linger in the air as I stepped inside. My flashlight flickered, casting long shadows on the damp walls. The tunnel was eerily quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're not home alone, even when you're the only one there. I kept walking, telling myself it was just a tunnel, nothing more. But deep down, I could feel the unease growing. The deeper I went, the more the darkness seemed to press in around me. It felt like I was walking into a living nightmare, like one of those creepypasta stories you'd find on Reddit. Every step echoed, bouncing off the walls, and I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was following me. About halfway through, I heard it. A whisper, soft at first, barely audible. My heart skipped a beat. I stopped and listened, but all I could hear was my own breathing. I shook my head, convincing myself it was just my imagination, and kept walking. But then I heard it again, louder this time, a voice calling my name. I froze, shining my flashlight around, but the beam barely cut through the darkness. The voice grew louder, closer, like it was coming from just behind me. I turned around, expecting to see someone standing there, but there was nothing. The tunnel was empty, but the voice continued, echoing through the air like a ghost from another time. My hands shook as I gripped the flashlight tighter, my pulse racing. This wasn't supposed to happen. It was just an old underpass. How could there be whispers in the dark? The voice was relentless now, growing louder with each step I took. I started walking faster, my breath coming in shallow gasps, trying to block out the sound. But it was no use. The voice followed me, always just out of sight, like some demon lurking in the shadows. I finally broke into a run, splashing through puddles as I raced for the exit. But no matter how fast I ran, the voice never faded. It was like the tunnel itself was alive, mocking me, trapping me in this paranormal horror. It felt like one of those scary stories animated that I used to watch as a kid. Only this time, it wasn't just a story. It was real, and I was living it. As I neared the end of the tunnel, something caught my eye, movement in the corner of my vision. I turned my head just in time to see a figure, pale and translucent, standing at the far end of the tunnel. It wasn't moving, just watching me. My heart stopped. This wasn't just my imagination. This was something real, something from another world. A chill ran down my spine, and I stumbled, nearly dropping my flashlight. I backed away slowly, my eyes locked on the figure. It didn't follow me, but it didn't need to. The air around me was thick with dread, and the voice was still there, whispering, louder than ever. I turned and sprinted for the exit, my footsteps echoing like gunshots in the empty tunnel. I burst out into the night, gasping for breath. The tunnel stood silent behind me, as if nothing had happened, but I knew better. I had seen it. Something was in there, and it wasn't just a ghost. It was darker, more malevolent, like the spirit of someone who had died long ago and refused to move on. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the figure, heard the whispers. I tried watching YouTube kids' videos to calm my nerves, but it didn't help. The whispers had followed me out of the tunnel, and now they were everywhere. I would hear them in my house, in my car, even in my dreams. The figure's hollow eyes stared at me from the shadows, always watching, always waiting. I did some research the next day and found out that the underpass had a dark history. Several people had gone missing there over the years, their bodies never found. Locals believed the tunnel was cursed, that the souls of the lost still roamed its depths. It wasn't just another true horror story. It was real. I had seen it with my own eyes, and now I couldn't escape it. I haven't gone back to that tunnel since, and I never will. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls and the world is quiet, I hear the whispers again. And I know, deep down, that whatever I saw in that tunnel is still there, waiting for the next unlucky soul to wander inside. The fourth story is about the phantom lights of the train tunnel. I should have known better than to go down there. The old train tunnel at the edge of town had been closed for decades, but that didn't stop the local kids from daring each other to explore it. They said it was haunted, that the spirits of the workers who died during its construction still wandered its depths. I had heard the ghost stories and the rumors of paranormal activity, but like most people, I dismissed them as just scary stories, until the night I went in myself. It was late, and the air was heavy with mist from the earlier rain. The rain sounds echoed faintly in the distance as I approached the tunnel, flashlight in hand. The entrance loomed before me like a giant mouth, ready to swallow me whole. My heart raced as I stepped inside, the light from my flashlight barely cutting through the thick darkness. The tunnel was long, and the air was stale. My footsteps echoed unnervingly, making it feel like someone or something was following me. The deeper I went, the colder it got, and the walls seemed to close in around me. It was the kind of place that felt alive, like it was waiting for you to make a mistake. The darkness pressed down on me, and for the first time, I started to regret coming here. It felt like I had stepped into one of those creepypasta stories from Reddit, the kind where no one makes it out alive. I walked further into the tunnel, trying to ignore the growing sense of dread gnawing at my insides. That's when I saw it. A light, faint at first, but growing brighter as it moved toward me from deep within the tunnel. My first thought was that it was another person, maybe someone exploring like me. But the light was wrong. It didn't flicker like a flashlight, and it didn't move like someone walking. It floated, gliding through the darkness, casting eerie shadows on the walls. I stopped in my tracks, my breath catching in my throat. The light was getting closer, and with it came a low, almost melodic hum. My skin prickled as I realized this wasn't natural. It felt like I was watching one of those scary videos you find online, but this was real. I was living it. My heart pounded as I backed away, but the light kept coming, faster now, as if it had noticed me. I turned to run, but as I did, I felt a cold, clammy hand brush against my arm. I screamed, my voice echoing through the tunnel, but there was no one there. My flashlight flickered wildly as I sprinted back toward the entrance, the humming growing louder behind me. The light was chasing me. My mind raced as I ran, my footsteps splashing through the puddles left behind by the rain. This wasn't just some ghost-hunting adventure gone wrong. This was a living nightmare. I could hear the light gaining on me. The hum, now a deafening roar, like the sound of a train barreling down the tracks. But there were no tracks, no train. Just me and whatever was behind me. I glanced over my shoulder and saw it, something more than just a light. It was a figure, shrouded in the glow, its face pale and gaunt, like a ghost from a horror story. Its hollow eyes locked onto mine, and I knew in that moment that it wasn't going to let me leave. The tunnel seemed to stretch forever, the exit always just out of reach. My lungs burned, and my legs felt like they were made of lead. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I burst out of the tunnel and into the night. The mist clung to my skin as I collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. Behind me, the tunnel was silent, but I knew better. I had felt its presence. I had seen the light. I made it home that night, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me out. I tried watching YouTube kids' videos to calm myself down, hoping the innocent content would push the terror from my mind, but the image of that figure stayed with me. I could still hear the hum, faint but persistent, as if it were waiting for the right moment to drag me back. Over the next few days, strange things started happening. I'd see flashes of light out of the corner of my eye, hear the faint hum when I was home alone, and feel cold drafts even when all the windows were closed. It was like the tunnel hadn't let me go, like it was still holding on to a piece of me. I researched the tunnel's history and found out that several workers had died there during its construction, crushed by collapsing walls or trapped by flooding. Their bodies were never recovered. It wasn't just another scary story or an old urban legend. It was a true horror story. And now, I had become a part of it. I haven't been back to the tunnel since that night, and I don't plan to. But sometimes, when I'm lying in bed late at night, I hear it. The hum, faint at first, but growing louder as it creeps closer. I know it's only a matter of time before it finds me again.